focus on the budget for the Kansas Department of Education. So we will start off with a staff overview. Jennifer Light. Welcome to committee, Jennifer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Light, and I'm with KLRD. In the audience is Dr. Frank Harwood, the Deputy Commissioner for the Division of Learning Services, and Melissa Rooker, the Executive Director for the Children's Cabinet. They're going to be coming up and speaking about the budget after me. In front of you, you have the Kansas State Department of Education's budget analysis from KLRD. The first several pages are a high-level overview. Page 4 begins the expenditures and financing section, which includes the 10-year tables for operating expenditures and state aid. But page 7 starts the fiscal year 2024 analysis, and that's where I'd like to start today. The top of page 7 is a table summarizing the budget request for fiscal year 24. The legislature approved $6.7 million, including $4.7 million SGF. Subsequent to the 2023 session, there was a reappropriation of SGF of $113.5 million. This was shifted from fiscal year 23 to 24. This includes $95.6 million in state foundation aid, $15.8 million in supplemental state aid, $1.1 million for school district juvenile detention facilities and the Flint Hills Job Corps Center grants, and $886,758 for the MHIT pilot program, and $142,314 for special education services aid. The agency estimate begins at the bottom of page 7. The agency requests a revised estimate of $6.7 billion in expenditures in fiscal year 24, including $4.6 billion SGF, $43.8 million from the ELARF fund, $42.0 million from the CIF fund, and $445,815 from the KEY fund. The revised estimate includes the following supplemental request. It includes $87,297 SGF to account for a shortfall in appropriations for the legislative pay plan in 2023 Senate Bill 25. Top of page 8 begins the significant adjustments absent that supplemental request. This includes the spring 2023 education consensus estimate. The agency made an adjustment of a decrease of $84.1 million SGF in fiscal year 24 to match the spring 2023 education consensus numbers. This was needed because the governor's veto came after the omnibus veto session, so the adjustment needed to be made in the agency's request. There was also $40,000 that was lapsed in SGF in fiscal year 24 for the Career Technical Education Credential Pilot Program. Pursuant to KSA 723822, this program was only to exist for the school year 22-23, so the appropriations for 24 were lapsed back. Numbers 5 through 9 are for federal COVID-19 funding. So there is an increase of $27.9 million in fiscal year 24 to support the federal Every Student Succeeds Act. There's also an increase of $7.6 million to support the development of the Early Childhood Workforce Registry and support the Early Childhood Capacity Accelerator Grant Program. There's an increase of $2.6 million to help support special education for children from ages 3 through 21 with disabilities. There is $2.2 million, an increase of $2.2 million to help support nonprofit breakfast and national school lunches in schools, as well as residential child care institutions and meals and snacks for child care centers and daycare homes. Number 9 at the bottom of page 8 has a decrease of $19.4 million of ARPA money. The Children's Cabinet was awarded $40 million in ARPA funding to provide subgrants to the early childhood education providers that were originally expected to be in fiscal years 23 and 24. And they are now happening in fiscal years 24 and 25. So there's a decrease of $19.4 million in fiscal year 2024. You'll see in 25 there's an increase there as well because of the change. There is a CIF reappropriation of $1.4 million, which was shifted from fiscal year 2023 to 2024. Top of page 9 talks about the KEY fund reappropriation of $168,585, which was also shifted from 23 to 24. There's also private donations for the Children's Cabinet. They received a private grant from the Patterson Family Foundation of $1.25 million, and this will be used to support the Early Childhood Capacity Accelerator Grant Program. The agency also requests the authority to transfer the cash balance in the School District Capital Improvements Fund to the SGF in fiscal year '24. Starting in fiscal year '24, capital improvement state aid is going to be funded as a demand transfer, and the school district's capital improvement fund will no longer be used to process state aid payments. And there's currently a cash balance of $328 due to a check being received by a school district after that final 2023 payment, so they just want permission to move it to the SGF. The middle of the page talks about all other adjustments. I want to highlight that there is an increase of 9.6 FTE positions. According to the agency, these positions will be funded by existing resources, and they're primarily funded by non-SGF money. The new positions include the following: 1.0 FTE for a legislative analyst in the Office of the Deputy Commissioner of Fiscal and Administrative Services, 1.0 FTE for a senior administrative assistant in the IT program, 3.0 FTE for positions in teacher licensure, 2.0 positions in the Children's Nutrition and Wellness Program, 1.0 FTE for an education program consultant in the Special Education Services Program, 1.0 FTE for a public service executive that will work primarily with COVID-19 funds, and 1.0 FTE for a grant manager in the Children's Cabinet. Bottom of page 9 is the governor's recommendation. The governor recommends $6.7 billion, including $4.6 billion SGF in fiscal year '24. This is an all-funds increase of $7.3 million, or 0.1%, but a SGF decrease of $13.1 million SGF from the agency's revised estimate. The governor's recommendation also includes 267.9 FTE positions, which is the same as the agency's revised estimate. The governor's recommendation includes the following adjustment. The governor recommends accepting the fall 2023 education consensus estimate. This is an increase of $7.3 million all funds, including a decrease of $13.1 million SGF. This includes a decrease of SGF of $12.4 million for state foundation aid, a decrease of just over $700,000 for CAPER's non-USD contributions, and a decrease of $341 for CAPER's USD contributions. There's also a decrease of just over $100,000 from the mineral production fund. There are increases of $6.0 million in the school district finance fund and $14.5 million from the 20 mil levy. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions for 24 or continue to 25.
Committee, what questions do you have on 2024? I'll go ahead and ask a few of them. So talk to us a little bit about, so on page 7, with regard to the MHIT, Mental Health Intervention Team Pilot Program. So that program is still through a proviso, correct?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, and how was the money distributed differently this year as a proviso? Is it still just being distributed to CMHCs, or is it going out to community health centers that also applied?
One second, Madam Chair.
What? I mean, this prior, the proviso for 24. Could you just share with us how it's going to be different?
Madam Chair, I'm not 100% certain that it is different this year. I believe that part of the proviso was removed in the governor's veto of Senate Bill 25, but I'd be happy to double check for you.
Okay, if you would do that, that would be helpful. Could we talk a little bit about the 9.6 FTE positions? So is it my understanding that this last year we had more than 30 positions that remained unfilled?
As of the beginning of this month, Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay, so, and yet the request is to add positions?
The request is for the 9.6 positions, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I guess when we have testimony from, I guess Dr. Harwood or from Ms. Cohen or Keene, how do you pronounce it, Cohen or Keene? Okay. So if someone can express that, I don't know why we would add positions if we still have vacancies. And then the last question that I have has to do with the private donations. So the 1.25 million is due to the Children's Cabinet receiving a private grant. This money is to be used to support Early Childhood Capacity Accelerator Grant Program, which provides grants to early childhood providers with the goal of increasing capacity through Kansas. And yet yesterday in our hearing about the School for the Blind, they were wanting to expand the early childhood opportunity that would include not only children that were blind, but would be that reverse inclusion, that the young children that were that had their vision. And that funding was declined or turned down by the governor. So would that not be eligible for any of the funding to come through this?
Yeah. Madam Chair, I would defer to the Children's Cabinet Director on that, and if she doesn't have an answer today, then I'd be happy to get back to you.
Okay. So we will talk about that later. Yes, Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned this on page 8, 5 through 9. Was that ARPA money, ESSER money, or is that?
So it's a combination of money from ARPA, from ESSER, and from Ian's. And so it's a little bit of, it's COVID-19 money. The one that is for number 9 is specifically ARPA money. I can say that 100%, but the rest of them are a little bit.
Thank you.
Do we know what our total balance is of unencumbered COVID money?
Madam Chair, if I could go back to my.
Absolutely.
So, Madam Chair, I believe we have $481.6 million in ESSER funds that are remaining, 6.1 million funds in Ian's and GEAR funding. ARPA IDEA Part B, we have 2.6 million. And then the Children's Cabinet has 1 million that are, oh no, I apologize. That Children's Cabinet was returned. That is not remaining. So.
Could you give us that first figure?
Sure. The ESSER funding, there is 481.6 million per the agency's narrative.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The top of page 12 starts fiscal year 2025. This is also a summary of the budget request. The middle of the page begins the agency's request. The agency requests $6.6 billion in expenditures for fiscal year 25, including $4.9 billion SGF, $42.8 million from the ELARF fund, $40.6 million from the CIF fund, and just under $277,000 from the Key Fund. This is an all funds decrease of $135 million, or 2%, and an SGF increase of $336.4 million. The agency also requests 268.9 FTEs for fiscal year 25. The request includes 93.2 million SGF and 1.0 FTE for the following enhancement requests. The agency requests an additional 86.7 million SGF to increase the percent of excess cost to 75.1% for fiscal year 25. The agency has developed a 4-year plan to reach 92% excess costs, and the agency would annually recalculate the amount needed to reach the 92% of excess costs by fiscal year 2028. The agency also requests 3.0 million SGF for additional MHIT pilot program funding for fiscal year 25. This would bring total funding to 16.5 million, all SGF. The additional funding would expand the program for another 15 to 25 USDs. The program currently has 90 school districts in fiscal year 2024. Top of page 13, the agency requests an additional 1.9 million SGF for the professional development program for fiscal year 25. Per KSA 722551, professional development state aid should be the lesser of 0.5% of a school district's general fund or 50.0% of actual expenditures for an approved professional development program. The program was appropriated $1.8 million in fiscal year 23 and for fiscal year 24, so the enhancement request would increase total funding to $3.7 million for fiscal year 2025, and this amount would cover 65.2% of the state obligation for fiscal year 25. Middle of the page, the agency requests 1.0 million SGF to provide additional funding for the mentor teacher program for fiscal year 25. The current funding for fiscal year 25 is 1.3 million SGF, and it provides stipends for mentors assisting first-year teachers. The mentors for first-year teachers get $1,000, mentors assisting second-year teachers get $500, and mentors assisting third-year teachers get $250. The enhancement request would increase total funding for all teachers to 2.3 million SGF and would provide all mentor teachers the ability to receive the $1,000 stipend, whether they are mentors for first year, second year, or third year teachers. The agency also requests 517,622 SGF to provide additional funding for career and technical education transportation for fiscal year 25. The state reimburses school districts for a portion of the cost to transport 11th and 12th grade students to post-secondary vocational programs, and this enhancement request would increase total funding for the program to 2.0 SGF for fiscal year 25. Finally, the agency requests 85,000 SGF and 1.0 FTE to create a new school safety auditor position to visit school districts, audit district safety plans, and make recommendations to districts on how to improve the physical security of their schools. The agency says that current school safety staff conduct school safety audits on occasion, but they have other responsibilities that prevent them from devoting additional time to this task. Top of page 14 begins the significant other adjustments outside of the enhancement requests. The agency made an adjustment for the spring 2023 education consensus, and that was again because the governor's veto came in after the veto session, and so they just needed to make the adjustment to the budget. Numbers 8 through 11 are also federal COVID funding decreases. These four would end up being a total decrease of $519.1 million, mostly because of the COVID money being used up. It's offset by a $20 million increase in ARPA capital improvements, and that's because the Children's Cabinet moved from fiscal year 23-24 to the fiscal year 24-25, so the money will be, more money will be expended in 25. Number 12 at the bottom of page 14 talks about the increase for student support and academic enrichment grants. There's a $3.1 million, which is federal funding specifically for the Title IV Part A program to improve academic achievement. Then the agency also requests the following to be considered by the legislature for fiscal year 25. The agency requests continued authority to allow the Director of Budget to transfer funds between the agency's SGF funds. The legislature has authorized this language since 2019. The agency requests proviso language which allows the agency to distribute state aid from the school safety fund whenever the funds are available for fiscal year 25 rather than by November 1st. The legislature has approved similar proviso language for every year since fiscal year 2018. The agency requests continued authority for fiscal year 25 to distribute donations of income tax returns made by Kansas taxpayers to all school districts. The continued authority to distribute funding would be used when a specific school district is not chosen by the taxpayer donating the funds. The agency also requests the creation of a new fund to account for revenues and expenditures associated with the administration of the NAEP exam. Previously, this was funded by a grant from the U.S. Department of Education. No expenditures would be made from the account in fiscal year 24, but the agency is requesting that it be appropriated in both fiscal year 24 and 25 in order to have sufficient time to conduct the necessary transfers before fiscal year 2025. Finally, the agency requests that the parallel exam forms The agency requests that the legislature consider that parallel assessment forms be used for the state assessments, so that in-person students and virtual students are assessed on the same standard using different questions. The agency indicates a concern about the possibility of a breach in security, which would invalidate the entire assessment, and the agency would not have information to report to either the state or the federal government. The agency anticipates that developing and administering parallel assessments, as well as ensuring the security of the virtual assessments, would be $9.4 million, including $5.3 million ongoing costs for fiscal year 25. Bottom of page 15 is the governor's recommendation. The governor recommends $6.6 billion, including $5.0 billion SGF, $42.8 million from ELARF, $41.5 million from CIF, and just over $276,000 from the Key Fund. This is an all funds increase of $22.3 million and an SGF increase of $54.1 million above the agency's request for fiscal year 25. The governor also recommends 267.9 FTE positions, which is a decrease of 1 FTE below the agency's request. Top of page 16 are the governor's enhancements. The governor does not recommend adopting the enhancement requests for the CTE transportation, which is item number 5, or for the school safety auditor position, which is item number 6. The governor, instead of a 4-year plan for special education services state aid, the governor recommends a 5-year plan. For fiscal year 2024, this would be $74.9 million SGF. This results in an $11.8 million SGF decrease from the agency's enhancement request. The governor recommends accepting the fall 2023 education consensus estimate, which is a decrease of $5.2 million all funds, including a decrease of $66.0 million SGF to match the fall education consensus numbers. The governor also recommends replacing $93.4 million from the school district finance fund with SGF money. As part of the governor's tax plan, the governor is including an increase for residential property tax exemption on the 20 mil property tax to $100,000, which would then reduce the revenue to the school district finance fund by $93.4 million in fiscal year 25, and the governor recommends replacing that money with SGF. The governor recommends $4 million SGF for the agency to develop parallel assessments for the annual state assessments. I do want to point out that this is not on top of the 9.4. The agency did not request any money in their actual request, so this would be $4 million for the parallel state assessments, not on top of that 9.4. There are 3 enhancements underneath the children's cabinet. The governor recommends an additional $30 million SGF for a child care accelerator grant, and this money would be used for people who cannot use the federal funding, and it's meant to be a one-time amount to supplement the federal ARPA SFRF funds. The children's cabinet also has $5 million SGF for fiscal year 25 to fund a public-private partnership, which establishes ongoing, sustainable, community-level child care solutions within the Dane G. Hansen Foundation's footprint, which is mostly in rural Kansas counties. And the governor recommends $815,000 from the CIF to provide incentives for specialty infant care. Child Care Aware administers a pilot program called Baby Steps, which would provide additional financial incentives for providers who expand access specifically to infant child care. And this program is currently funded through private philanthropy, and it serves 53 programs in 20 rural districts. Before I stand for questions, I just want to note that pages 18 through 21 focus on the supplements and enhancements side by side. So if you want to compare what the governor and what the agency requested, those are the pages I would refer you to. Pages 22 through 23 focus on the actual fall 2023 education consensus estimates, and the rest of the document is broken into operations, state aid, and the children's cabinet. Pages 29 and 30 have a table that does break out all the state aid individually if you want to look at that. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Jennifer, great job of going through a lot of information. So committee, we'll start with Senator O'Shea with questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sometimes I have a hard time when looking at these requests, which one are one-time requests and which ones would then, if we granted them, would go into the budget year after year. Does that make sense? So I don't know if that can be broken down maybe via email or something. And then may I with another question?
Well, why don't we just go ahead in looking at pages 12, and let's just kind of go through those. If you would, go ahead, Jennifer, and identify the ones that would be ongoing.
So number one, special education services state aid would be ongoing, as it would be working towards a 92% state excess costs. The number two for the MHIT program would be ongoing. Number three for professional development would be ongoing. Number four for the mentor teacher program would be ongoing. The CTE transportation, I believe, would be ongoing. If that's wrong, I'm sure the agency will correct me on that, but
We saw.
Oh, good. Okay, then yes, that one would be ongoing. The school safety auditor, number 6, would be ongoing. The spring consensus estimate is not quite ongoing because we do adjust for the fall then later on. So that is, but the consensus is an ongoing overall. The 8, 9, 10, and 11, well, 8, 9, and 10, where it's the reduction of money because of COVID-19 coming down, would not be ongoing because they're just not, there's no more funding coming in. Number 11 would not be ongoing because that's just the one-time ARPA funds. Number 12 would be ongoing, but it's federal money. Moving to 14, which is the governor's recommendations. I guess 15 would actually start the governor's recommendations. That would be the governor's version of the special education services state aid. That would be ongoing. The fall consensus is an ongoing. The governor's recommendation to increase the 20 mil exception would be an ongoing move to the SGF. The parallel virtual assessments would be ongoing. The Child Care Accelerator Grant is a one-time fund. The public-private partnership is a one-time fund. Thank you. And then the incentives for specialty care, I believe, is a one-time fund, but I'm sure that the agency would be happy to speak to that one as well.
Was that helpful? Do you have a follow-up?
I do.
Okay.
I'm like, yikes. Okay. Okay, when I look at number 2, mental health intervention team pilot program on page 12, what do we, so it appears we've been doing that for a number of years. Have we had an update on the program? What are the outcomes? Are we seeing the outcomes we're wanting? I would kind of ask a similar question with number 4, mentor teacher program. And these ring a bell as, and it says in here, you know, you funded it at this much, we're asking for increases. But then I'm recalling last year, I feel like we struck the mentor teacher program. So is this kind of the same request they had last year that we took out? Those would be my questions.
Okay.
We have had people from the Department of Education come speak to several different committees this year and over the interim regarding the MHIT program. I do not have that here in front of me currently, but I'd be happy to get you whatever they presented on regarding that.
There's
shouldn't
been
be a
discussion
problem.
about expanding it because we only have 29 community mental health centers. That's not enough to cover all of the different school districts, and we want to make sure that providers that have the experience and the expertise that are available that aren't CMHCs could also participate in the funding to provide those services to schools. So that's one thing that we've certainly looked at.
As far as the mentor teacher program, Madam Chair, this is my first year with education, and I'm uncertain if that was what was struck last year or not, so I'd have to look into that and get back to you.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. I also would like more information on that mental health pilot program because I know we tried to expand that so other people could access those funds. And could also following up, did we give an increase to that or was the 3 million what has previously? I know we tried to add more money, but I thought that was too.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to send any information
Thank
to the
you.
entirety of the committee. I know that they have increased the money each year, and the program has expanded each year. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but it has expanded each year as the MHIT program has gone along. But I will get those numbers and be happy to pass that all into the committee.
The Senate did introduce in conference committee a proviso to expand funding, to double the funding, and to allow outside organizations. That was rejected by the House by Representative Landwehr and her committee on the House. So,
Madam Chair, I do have a little bit of information here.
Okay.
If you, in 2019, there were 9 school districts with 82 schools with 1,708 students. In 2020, they increased that to 32 school districts with 3,266 students. 2021, they increased to 56 schools with 4,711 students. 2022 went to 55 school districts, but had 5,117 students. 2023 had 67 school districts with 6,014 students. And then in fiscal year 2024, they have 90 school districts, and I don't know the number of students.
Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on that, and how much have we continued, how much did we start with, which I think I know, and then how much have we added each year? Do you have that as we've increased the number of schools?
So in 2018, the legislature appropriated $10 million from the SGF to fund the program. And then there was $8 million appropriated in 19, 12.7 million SGF in 2020, 7.9 million was appropriated in 2021's legislature, 10.5 was SGF was appropriated in 2022, 2023. They appropriated 13.5 million SGF, so with this increase, that would move it to 16.5 million.
Committee, any other questions? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just a quick one on page 12 and 13. Again, the MHIT, if I'm understanding right, $3 million additional dollars to bring on 15 to 20 more school districts. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So that comes out to between 120,000 to 200,000 per district. And my understanding, and if someone else needs to answer this, that's fine, is really the only cost is a liaison.
I would defer to the agency at this point, but if they'd be happy to get you more information on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Straub, then Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify in the budget without any of the enhancements or other requests, the 4.589 billion is just base aid, correct? With weightings.
Well, so the 4.5 or the $4.6 billion is the entirety of the budget, which includes operations costs and the children's cabinet. That's not just the base or state foundation aid.
Do we have the numbers on what is just?
So state foundation aid. So on page 29, we have the state aid and other assistance table. And in there, you can see that state foundation aid is laid out with actuals, agency governor for fiscal years 22, 23, and fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. So state foundation aid for fiscal year 24 is at 2.572 billion. 2.6 billion. That's due to the fall education estimates. In 2025, it's 2.9 billion due to the fall 2023 education consensus estimates. And that's just state foundation aid. That's not the entirety of state aid going out.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. This may be a question for the agency in a minute, but the parallel assessment forms would like kind of some more information because you had put in there 9.4 but didn't ask for those dollars, and then the governor did that 4 million. So at the appropriate time would like information on that.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One quick question. Jennifer, on page 4 and 5, the operating expenditures, would that be KSDE's operating costs for the agency?
Madam Chair, so on page 4 and 5, those are operating expenditures that do include the children's cabinet. If you're looking for operations costs that are just for KSDE, that is back, I have on page 25, that is just operations costs, operations expenditures for KSDE. That is all funds, not SGF only, but I'd be happy to get you the SGF only numbers.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I'm looking at on page 29, where we were talking about 3 million for the MHIT, but it looks like it's actually 16.5 million. So it's like what, a three additional $1 million?
Right. That's an increase of 3 million.
An increase of 3 million. And then the other question that I had was on page 16. On number 17, it says the governor recommends replacing 93.4 million from the school district finance fund with SGF money, meaning 93.4 million of SGF money, correct?
Yes, currently that is taken from the school district finance fund, which is where the 20 mil is. And so by increasing the 20 mil exception to 100,000, that would decrease the school district finance fund by that amount. So we're basically taking, and instead of using that revenue, it would be SGF.
So this is based upon her tax plan, is that right?
Yes, Madam Chair.
And then the other question I had, Madam Chair, one more, is on number 19. If I look earlier, I see that it says the children's cabinet was given 40 million, correct? Allotted 40 million. And so is this an additional 30 million?
Yes, that is an additional, this would be SGF for, to cover what is not, so currently, the money that is coming in is federal money only, and so this 30 million is meant to cover people who do not meet the federal requirements.
So 40 million plus this 30 million.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions. I do have a brief comment. Each time that we talk about special education, which is item number 1 on page 12, it then is item number 1 with the governor's nope, excuse me. It is number 15 with the governor's. I just want to point out that it states that the agency would annually recalculate the amount needed to reach 92% of excess cost. That's not what that is. That is the state average of 92%, correct?
So excess cost is done at a statewide level. So it's not district by district 92%, it is a statewide.
Correct. It's the statewide. And I only point that out because, committee, you've seen the runs that were provided for us earlier on in the session. And as we continue to put more money into special education services, those school districts that are receiving 90% up to, I think there was one school district that was over 1,000% of excess cost. Those that are high will continue to rise, and those that are lower, that are at 60-some% or whatever, they might climb some. But it is not this notion of pulling those that are low up to the 92%. There is not going to be that with the way in which, again, we disperse funds for those districts that provide their own sped services, those that are interlocals and those that are co-ops. And then we include the transportation component and the districts that have, the students that have high exceptional costs. And that changes from year to year as to which districts have that. Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question's for you. How do we fix that so it's more by district basis and not this statewide? Is that statute that's currently dictating that it's statewide, or what?
We would like to fix that. We have had leadership in the House and the Senate has had multiple meetings with the Department of Education folks. We have asked for the State Board of Education to come up with a recommendation. We have asked the Department of Education to come up with recommendations. And the recommendations that you see are simply what is here. Add more money to the formula. So as we add more money, it still is not going to address that inconsistency and those districts that are still way below. Senator O'Shea,
Thank you.
Senator Petty, and then Senator Sykes.
My follow-up is where, there's some policy they're following that's this, statewide. Is it KSDE policy? Is it in statute? Where did we come up with the way that's being done, and what can those legislators do about it?
Well, you raised your hand, so Jennifer will respond.
KSA 723422 is where the excess costs formula is located in statute.
So now we have Senator Petty and then Senator Sykes.
Madam Chair, I mean, I know there's lots of issues within special ed, but isn't one of them the fact that we, parents get to make the decisions about where they live and what school district they live in, and we cannot necessarily determine that every school district will have the same percentage of children that are special eds or have the same special ed needs?
Well, parents certainly have that choice, but as far as the compensation for cost, because certain districts are members of co-ops, other districts are members of interlocals, the way in which the funding is distributed, not only the federal funding, but the state funding is different for the three different types of special education delivery. But absolutely, parents always have the choice of where to send their children to school. Again, some of it is the way in which it's designed right now in the formula. Senator Sykes, you're next, and then Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the conversation, and I do think that is why it was important that that special ed task force should have been meeting all last, while we were not in session to really do this, and when they called the committee meeting for January 5th, when there was actually nothing that could be done. So I just want to say that we actually did have a bipartisan plan to actually try to remedy this.
Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just thinking about the SPED funding, do the IDD waivers have anything to do with which districts are getting more than others, or no? I think JG's shaking his head no.
Madam Chair? Yes. I do not believe that they have anything to do with that.
Thanks.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've listened to the conversation, and the interim committee for special education's charge was to look at the funding formula. And the concern raised at the time was, we know what's going to happen. They're just going to come back with a blanket amount. And if you look at what the charge of that committee is. It's to deal with issues with the special education formula, and that was not done. So thank you, Madam Chair.
I think there were a few recommendations. I am hopeful that we will get an update on those. One of them was that fifth distribution of funding would be earlier, that it would be before school started in August rather than in October. Another recommendation was that we look at opening up the codes so that services that are provided could actually be billed to Medicaid. That still hasn't been resolved. In fact, there is continued effort, at least on the House side, to keep it locked in so that other providers, any providers other than CMHCs, could not be eligible to bill those codes. So that's still an issue. So we will continue to move forward on this. Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one request of research. If I could get a year run on increases per Gannon, the number of funding increases the state aid to the schools from, what, 2016, 2015? I can't remember exactly when that all shook out. But if I could get a historical run, exactly how much we've increased it every year as a dollar amount, a percentage, and then just maybe a graph. It'd be helpful for me to visualize this as I see the new request here. Thank you.
I think we did have that graph that JG had come up with. We'll make sure that you get it not only hard copy, but in PDF. It did, I guess if you could add what's proposed here. And Senator Gossage, did you have a?
Just a really short question, if I may, Madam Chair. I know we're up crunch against time.
Oh.
When I was looking up, she's like, oops. So when I was looking up the Children's Cabinet, looks like it was founded in 1999. It was created to oversee the expenditures from the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement, with 95% of the state's portion of the agreement was dedicated to improving health and well-being of children and youth in the state. So I'm wondering why SGF funds are going to this. Would that not, those funds already be set aside for that agreement?
Madam Chair, the money from the tobacco settlement is the CIF fund, the Children's Initiative Fund. That is broken out into several different programs, and there's money that is given to programs within DCF, within KDHE, within education, and then the Children's Cabinet has programs that they run with that as well. To my knowledge, it doesn't exclude it from getting SGF, but the original money was tobacco settlement money.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Tobacco.
I apologize. Usually I'm always just kind of looking at the clock, and I have stopped looking at the clock during this because some of it was writing down things as well. So I'm going to ask really quickly for those that are here today, are any of you absolutely unable to come tomorrow? If I understand from a committee member, but those that were to speak, would you be able to come tomorrow? So tomorrow we have is it just the one bill hearing? 2 bill hearings. So you know what? We're still going to make that work. So I think that you heard the questions that have been raised. If Dr. Harwood, if you and any of the others that are here to testify, if you would just kind of work together on addressing the issues that were brought up today, that would be helpful. And we will start off with that. And we'll have a time frame of about 10 minutes presentation and questions. So committee, I am going to not close the hearing, but I am going to pause the hearing that we have on the Kansas Department of Education's budget. We are adjourned.